Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Today's episode is actually something that I felt this past week, a lot of inspiration on this topic. I've been talking to people who have struggled with listening to and following and trusting a higher power. And it's not that I always trust a higher power to the same degree every day. I would be lying if I was to say that. But my understanding over the years of what has been my blocks, that when I feel blocked to listening to my higher power, why? What is coming up? Or when I feel like I can't really truly let go and seek and trust my higher power, like what is going on with that? And how that plays a role, what the tie-in is to resentments. And believe it or not, how much I don't trust God is exactly correlative to how much I end up resenting. One would say, of course, you will have more fear. It's understandable if you don't listen to or seek, that intuition, the higher power, and that is true. And ultimately, the resentments are, fear-based. Sure, that's true too. But what we don't hear so much about is really what is the behavior of a resentment or a judgment? Isn't it not that I have made somebody else a higher power, or I have made something a higher power? Bear with me. If I tell myself that this is what needs to happen for me to be okay, for me to have peace, for me to have security, safety, for me to have self-worth, for me to not be alone, to not be abandoned, if I tell myself this is what needs to happen for Lisa Trevino to be okay, I have made whatever it is my higher power. I may also still have a higher power that I choose to call God or not. And I might take the thing that I really hope to happen the way that I want to happen to that higher power and say, please, higher power, please help me to have this. But yet I'm still pointing my higher power to the higher power that I believe is going to make me happy. And, by putting it that way in that narrative, it's helped me so often, I can't tell you how many times this has happened, where I feel surrendered and I feel like I've let go of the results and I feel pretty good, and then next thing you know, I find myself in a position where things aren't going my way, and I'm at odds with God. I don't trust myself, I don't trust my intuition, I don't trust God. But the thing that always happens is that I start feeling like this world is an unsafe place, and I don't maybe deserve, or I don't get to have, or maybe I need to do something, maybe I'm too nice, whatever it is. And I miss it. I miss that I have made something that's not supposed to be that important. Too important. It could be a job, it could be a relationship, it could be a car, it could be a house, it could be any kind of possession, right? Anything that I'm so afraid somebody is going to do something to it, take it away, or I'm not going to get it. But what does it really mean is that I have made something into a higher power. I've made it capable and powerful enough to rob me of my peace of mind. I have made it powerful enough to make me feel like I'm not okay. I have given it power over my serenity, and by doing that, I have given power over, and if it goes the way I think it should, I will get respite, I will get peace, I will get the semblance of peace. I'm pleased, I'm happy. But if it doesn't, which invariably that's how it happens, I will be a basket case, because I put all my chips into that. I have told myself I need that to be. I hoped, I prayed, I did all the things with this attitude that this is how it needs to be. But when I realize I don't really know what my highest good looks like, and I'm able to turn it all over, legitimately turn it all over. And for me, it's a challenge, right? So I have to get to a place where I recognize that I don't really know what my highest good looks like, and I don't really have any true power over the outcome ultimately. And so I have to trust, you know what? God, you have my highest good, whatever it looks like. Guide me how to see this. Guide me what to do in this. Guide me even go in this direction, and let go of the results. And, we talk about how in recovery, well, when we first start recovery, where we were beaten into a state of reasonableness, to have an open mind, to even believe in a higher power, to even believe in unlearning some of the things that we've been running on, and adopting spiritual principles as a way of life, that we might have lost things, right? We might have lost the things that we think were so important. Like, it might have been respect, it might have been our family, it might have been our freedom, it might have been our health, it might have been our relationships romantically, it might have been our money, it might have been what we look like, it might have been our reputation, it might have been anything. And whatever it is, there's a tipping point for each person that's completely different in the form of it, where whatever it is becomes just intolerable to us. And for one person, it could be losing the job that was so important, and for this person over here, it could be losing their health, and on and on. And so it's interesting to me, because for me, I lost a lot of things, and I almost lost my life. And, when everything looked like it was nowhere but up, it was easier, not easy, but easier to turn everything over and say, okay, you know what, God, take me or heal me, whatever that looks like, and not even knowing, like, just calling it God, but not even really, not the God that I had the story about, just wanting it to just be this intuition that I felt, this feeling that I had, not a story, not anything that I could really point to a book and say, that's my God, So anyway, as I started healing more and more over the years, and I was able to, get back, and now I have a car again, or now my health is better, and I'm not seizuring on a daily basis, and now I'm having relationships, now I'm healing stuff, and as I started getting better, as I started healing more, I would go now in and out of these spaces where old ideas would come back, and I would have things that I was taking credit for, like as if it's just my intellect, my ego, all by itself with no help from anyone, including intuition or God or anything. It's all me, right? And then because I would be taking credit, I would be my own little demigod. Because I was taking credit for these things, I would then feel more and more pressure, more and more overwhelmed, because I also knew that meant I was more responsible for these things, and which isn't even true. So I would be in fear more, and I would see people again through the eyes of whether or not they are doing things to hurt my chances of doing what I need to do, whether or not they understand me, and on, or stand in my way of getting what I need, etc. And then I would have to have like are you kidding? And turn over back to God, and that's what's so interesting, this overwhelm that would start to happen, where I would start to think that, I take myself too seriously, would get to a lower and lower tolerance for suffering, and it would hit that lowered limit, and I would be like, I can't, I give up, all right, what, and then I would go through a whole surrendering again, and like a deeper surrender, and letting go of more, and understanding how to let go of more. And so this is a gradual process, and this relationship with a higher power, for me, would feel like, okay, I'm back with that higher power, I'm back in that surrender, I'm back in that humility, and okay, I'm good, I feel pretty good. And then I would start to go, okay, what do I need to do? Where do I need to go? And I'm right. I'm listening. I'm good. I'm letting things go. Nothing's really bothering me. And then, little by little, I start getting like, okay, I just got to do this. Okay, I just got to do that. Less and less seeking. More and more thing. More and more doing. And man, it's this dance of remaining in a headspace of the girl who, of the soul having that human experience, of that girl who nearly lost everything and recognized that she of herself, based on her finite memory, based on her finite experience, based on her finite ideas, based on all of that and her physical finite strength, somehow with all that limitation, she's supposed to like eke out her good in this world and succeed and protect herself and get love too and be able to have all of her ducks in a row. And I have to remain in that teachable headspace of recognizing I don't know, living on a day-to-day basis. There's this beautiful prayer in recovery that I hear and I say with people that I work with, but I hear often at different certain events I like to go to, and it's called the set aside prayer, where it says, God, help me set aside everything I think I know, everything I think I know about life, about you, God, about recovery, about myself. Help me set aside everything I think I know about my business, about my body, about my dog, about everything, so I can have a new experience, so I can listen clearer to my intuition, and honestly to not have any other higher power. And so now I just started talking about how I can make these things that I want, or these things that I think are going to make me okay, a higher power. So that's just one way that I have found I needed to watch out for blocks to truly listening and living in the headspace of a surrendered woman in recovery, trusting and entrusting my life to a higher power. So another way that I have experienced a struggle in this was, and I it's interesting because, so I grew up with a religious God, but my dad was atheist, and so my parents didn't agree on anything having to do with God, and I didn't feel like anybody was really sharing about their personal experience when they did believe in God in my house. We would celebrate holidays and eat together and have people over, family, friends, and whatever. And that was okay, but it just felt very superficial because people would read prayers out of a book and place food on a table, but there wasn't any real, at least I didn't hear it, but there wasn't any real depth, there wasn't any real vulnerability, the kind of vulnerability that I come to fall in love with in recovery, where people are really sharing about what's going on in their inner world, right? And how they are learning to awaken more and to let go and to trust. God, that's just, I starved for that kind of community. And I'm so grateful that I get to be with like-minded people that their inner beacon is like focused in the same direction, the direction towards, awakening, of letting go more and more. But one of the things that happened, right, is that, and this isn't everybody's story, this is just me sharing where I struggled. One of the ways I struggled was, there's several, but one of them was that, I had traumas from my childhood where, my dad hit me he wrapped his belt around his wrist and he would beat me with the buckle. And, and I had verbal shaming from my mother, and felt very ignored by both my parents as well. Was made fun of by kids in school. Ended up on the top 10 people that missed the most school. My grandmother called me names. She called me the devil's spawn. And, I just went through a very, lonely, poor me, victim type headspace when I was growing up. And, I even hated the color of my skin. I felt like, so I was made, the way that the kids were able to make fun of me was, they called me Casper, or they called me a witch, or Elvira, or something like that. And, I certainly didn't see it as anything beautiful back then. And it wasn't until I ended up dancing and modeling later on that really helped me to have a completely different perception of it. But you can imagine the headspace. But, for a while, and then, when I was 17, I was raped by 3 guys. And then when I was 20, in my early 20s, I got into a situation where a doctor experimented on me in the efforts to fix me, but it was a very cult-like scenario, and drugs were involved, and he slept with me and videotaped it, and there was this whole thing that happened with that too, and it wasn't so much the things that happened. In fact, it wasn't even at all the things that happened to me. It was the things that I did to put myself in a position to get hurt, and my interpretation of it that were the two biggest parts of it. But these two things were lost on me as I was building such a story of helplessness and yet survivor. I had these two sides to me. I had this part of me that was like, I'm gonna make it. I grew up in New York, and I had that kind of attitude about it. And then I had the other side of me that was like, fuck this, I can't do this. And that side used. That side drank. That side checked out. That side wanted to be off the planet. That side was either alcohol, drugs, food, or it's suicide. Pick one, and to me, alcohol and drugs and all that anyway, the way that I did even food, I was bulimic, was so bad that I was picking suicide anyway. I'm not saying if that's what everybody else was doing, but for me, that's what it was. And oh my God, lack of power was certainly my dilemma. And I either felt like angry and survivor mode and like a steamroller and tough girl, and I felt like this false power, or I was pitiful and victim and insecure, sad, and terrified of abandonment, and I was this false like helplessness, this learned helplessness, this victim headspace. And in both cases, there was just this misallocation of power. There was a complete denial of any real emphasis on a higher power that could speak through me, that could be speaking to me through my gut, through my intuition, and always with me in a way that I could trust it. There is no God in the world that I kept spinning, where I was the one who had to protect myself and get everything I needed, or like helplessly, hopelessly turn my power over to another person and rely on them, depend on them to a place that they can't help but disappoint me. They can't help but, even in their best efforts, to not live up to my expectations or my perceived needs, right? So again, this is such an interesting topic for me because it's about going through life and giving my power away to things, to ideas, to people, wanting even the ideas, like my whole romantic ideas for a very long time, and I didn't want to admit it because I was so overly self-reliant, was I really wanted somebody to come and rescue me. These are ideas of an 8-year-old, and they stayed with me into my 20s and 30s and 40s, and this idea that like, you know, a relationship will be something like that. It had to be like worked out and worked out and worked out, and it was just these two extremes of, you know, I'm gonna do it or I can't do anything. This black or white, all or nothing thinking, and the power of that. And I remember learning that when I would overly rely on somebody, that I would end up even more afraid, giving them power. I would end up even more afraid and more critical of what they were doing. And I was totally unaware of the necessity to accept responsibility. I couldn't even fathom. Because if you would have told me, and maybe people did or not, I don't know, but if you would have told me that I had a part to play in the rapes, I had a part to play in what happened with the doctor, if you would have told me that I had a part to play in my dad hitting me, or my perception of it, or a part to play in the kids making fun of me, and on and on and on, if you would have told me that I had responsibility in that I abdicated, that there was something I was doing with the information that was hurting me way more than even the isolated incident, if you would have told me, you know, why I was that I was in these relationships because of something that was unhealed within me, if you would have told me that, I would have defended my victim story, making the guy, the doctor, the guys that made fun, the kids, my grandmother, my parents, my dad, right? Higher powers. Now I can't believe in a loving, caring God that's going to protect me. Well, I refuse to be open to a different narrative about all these little higher powers, these negative higher powers that existed in my consciousness. I was going to constantly be giving more and more power to other people too, because you see, if I'm believing, if I have these resentments, this idea that somebody has my good, somebody is the source of my discomfort, or my not having what I need, my lack of safety or whatever, like, if I believe it's somebody else's fault, I am telling myself that they are a higher power than me. A higher power than me. Not an equal, not another person, but a higher power than me. It's so interesting in recovery when people say that they have a hard time coming to believe in a higher power. I believed in higher powers all the time. That was not my issue. My issue was believing in a higher power that actually wanted my highest good, that actually was never apart from me, that knew better than I did within me, that there was another part of my consciousness that spoke in a much clearer way than the story of me would allow, right? And so this is such an interesting thing about how we give our power away and taking our power back, that, you know, I was diagnosed with PTSD, severe PTSD, chronic PTSD. I had PTSD that fed and created more PTSD, because with all these victim stories that I was carrying around in my invisible satchel, every situation that was happening to me. My mind interpreted it based on the files that I had about what it reminded me of. Who said something that could be, like this could prove? Or, you see, I can't trust people like that. You see, constantly adding things to these files that were getting thicker and thicker and thicker. These higher power files where I was giving, here's some more serenity, here's some more self-esteem, here's some more hope. Gone, tucked away in these lockable little files. That they were my higher powers, you know? Same relationship, right? Same relationship over and over again, different faces. Same jobs, different places. Same me, different part of my life. I was constantly coming from some aspect of the victim, and if I'm not careful, my interpretation today, at 52 years old, with 25 years clean and sober, can come from the perspective of a victim. And like when I hear the victim in my mind, I have to ask, well, hold on, girlfriend. You don't have to be at this job. You don't have to be in this relationship. You could go. What is going on here? There has to be a shift from victim to volunteer, and then to find out what is going on with me. Is it really something that's happening to me? Or is it my interpretation, my expectations even? What's really going on? And what's helpful for me is being first willing to be wrong and processing it, journaling, praying, meditating, and talking to another person in recovery that I feel gets me and that I can hear, and who I feel is detached from the results. They love me, they want my highest good, but they can hold space, and they're not looking to put their judgments onto me. And that's not that they don't have any, or that some of them can't, because they care about me and they're seeing something for themselves. But for the most part, we do get out of our own way to help another person, and we're not personally invested in the outcome. We're able to let go. We're able to let go to a higher power on their behalf and listen in maybe a clearer way when they're stuck. And so when I'm stuck, when something's coming up, I recognize I'm not at peace. I recognize I have a victim perspective, and I need to find another way, because it's dangerous. It's dangerous for me to have these imaginary negative higher powers. I will not be comfortable in my own skin. I could eventually drink or use drugs. There is no guarantee. But even more so, even if I never drank and did drugs again, if I am so uncomfortable in my own skin and my headspace is fear-based, life is just not worth living with that kind of continuous stuff. So I need to know, if I'm in a relationship and my boyfriend does something and it triggers me and it pisses me off, my rights come out, and all of a sudden there's a debate going on in my head about whether or not, this should be something I put up with, or whatever, and I have to go, okay, hold on. No big decision needs to be made right now, even though half of me already has her bags packed and my adrenaline is saying, let's go, let's go, let's go. But just to say, okay, what's really going on? Because I do not want to react, because that makes the person my higher power. It makes the whole situation my higher power. I need to allow the energy to diffuse, and I need to find out, what am I telling myself about this? What is going on? What is really going on here? It becomes less about anybody else or anything else, and it becomes about me and what's going on with me. And the moment that happens, this is the most profound shift that starts to happen when I start to take responsibility in my life and turn to God, to a higher power, and I say, show me how to see this differently. There's such a profound empowerment that happens. It is so necessary. And what ends up happening is the resentment that maybe I was thinking I had to work out another way, it goes away, because I recognize it's not them. I had a friend, Ron, who would come to I used to teach classes at my house for years before I had the meeting space, and I became ordained, and in A Course in Miracles. And anyway, so he would come over with these signs, and they would say, it's not them. We would give them out, and he laminated them, and we would put them up on the wall. And I love this so much. It's not them. What a great reminder. It's not them. It's not them. It's not that. My highest good isn't in having something specifically a certain way, that it needs to be for my serenity. And my highest good isn't in like it, or my worst thing that could possibly happen isn't in them either. It's like forget making higher powers and come back and say, you know what? Only the story that I'm running tells me that it needs to be this way for me to be okay. I don't know that for sure. There's so many things in my life that I've had to take the power back. Oh my God. Even for example, if I have a set idea, I have to be 15 minutes early. And I have to be 15 minutes early to whatever thing I do, or event, or anything. And unless I'm speaking at it, I don't know that that's true, that I need to be 15 minutes early. But I just have to let go. I was speaking at an event like a couple months ago, and I got into some serious traffic, and I was like, all right, I texted, somebody else started the pitch for me and started speaking for me instead, and I just trusted. I had to. I recognized, you know what, my peace of mind cannot be dependent upon me getting there by this specific time, because first of all, that's not going to make me, worrying is not going to make me get there on time. And second of all, I will not be able to really, truly speak from any kind of helpful way. I will be a basket case. But in this subtle little way, where if I tell myself I have to be somewhere at a certain time and like I need to, my peace of mind is so dependent on it, I have made it a higher power. I have made it capable of robbing me of my good, of robbing me of my my security, or my whatever. And like, that's what's happened over the years, is that it's become more and more of an unlearning of the ways, of the things that I believed have to be a certain way. Just have to be a certain way. You know, I just recently went to a gynecologist, and she had said that she wanted, because she's like, we are supposed to be in menopause, blah, 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 blah. But she ran this test, and she found out, like, again, I'm nowhere near menopause. And, but, you know, it can happen in a woman's 40s, all the way up into their 60s, whatever. Generally, by my age, she's so sure I have to have it right now. And I was just like, go ahead and test me and see. Like, I don't want menopause. I started seeing how I had this, like, this vehement reaction, like this visceral reaction, like this, like, I don't really want menopause. I had this whole story about how horrible it's going to be when I reach menopause, and I don't know, a lot of ignorance and a lot of delusional thinking, because, I mean, like, I want to live, and so if I live, eventually that's going to happen, and it kind of behooves me to get my head straight so that I don't end up making it a war inside of me that's going to rob me of my peace. That's probably going to be way more suffering is going to come from that than whether or not my hormones dip. And it's all the power of my own mind making it into a negative higher power that even puts me in all that anxiety in the first place. It's just an event, and when I can let go, I can listen and say, okay, well, let's say, you know, what do you want me to do? Anyway, sorry for that tangent, but so she said she wanted me to get an ultrasound. So I go, okay, fine. So I go in to get this ultrasound, and when I'm in the ultrasound, she has this wand up my hoo-ha, and she's like looking at all the stuff, and she sees, not she, but this technician sees these like air pockets, or these dark pockets, whatever, like that, in my ovaries, or my ovary, because I had an ovary removed already, and because I had growths on it years ago. Anyway, long story short, she told me that those were growths, and that they're pretty profound in size, and that I'm going to have this ovary removed, which will put me into menopause. The technician said all this, and even though there was an intuition that said, is she really able to diagnose this? She's the technician. This intuition, this soft intuition, this other voice in my mind, definitely not God, but this other voice in my mind goes, well, I mean, she's seen many tests, she probably knows what she's talking about, and she feels like she's obviously so sure with what she's saying, so we're going to have surgery. Well, I cried when she left the room, because I had such a story about menopause that it wasn't so much what she told me was going to happen. It wasn't even entirely the surgery of having an ovary removed. It was this idea that, like, the thing that I have decided was bad was going to happen. That's why I was suffering. That's why I was crying. Because I even got into it in the narrative of it, like, really, God, like, I feel like you guide me on how to take care of myself, and how are we here? Like, it was making me question all the thing, right? Because I believed what she said without really, truly listening to my intuition, and I hated the story of what it looked like it was bringing, because I had such a negative story about it. So I go in and I go out and I open my mouth because I'm not a quiet person, and I tell the person at the checkout that this just happened, and she looked at me, and I had other tests that were supposed to come back, and they had other tests, so we went into, she said, you know what, would you like to speak with a doctor, which was totally a miracle because she's usually too busy. Yes, please. Went into the room, and I am already getting into acceptance that I'm going to have surgery, and okay. Like, I'm already doing it. I'm rapidly doing some of the work on not questioning whether or not the technician was telling the truth, but at least getting into acceptance that if it was the truth, that this is life, and this is whatever. And so so the doctor comes in, and she goes, I don't know why she told you that. That is not even the truth. She says, this is what happens when you're in perimenopause. Like, you start having fluid and whatever like that, and we can give you an antibiotic, and it'll help take that out and whatever like that. And I was just like, I was like, tell me what? Like, again, say it again. Because I couldn't even listen to her because I believed so much, the technician, and I had such a story about menopause that, like, I felt the resistance. Like, that's how much we can have an investment in something not happening or happening, that we can make them these resistances to opening up, surrendering, and really truly listening to truth or whatever. And so she had to say it a couple times. She also had to leave the room, talk to the other doctor, the doctor, and she came back and she goes, I showed him the stuff and the visuals, the radiology, and I also told him my game plan, and he completely concurred. And I was like, all right, so I don't have to have surgery, and you do not. And I was just like, wow, what the hell did I just do to myself? And when I left, I was just like, God, Lisa, you have this idea about menopause. And it was so crazy, and so interesting, because as I said, God, help me with this. And then later on, some video appeared on my feed on Facebook by Drew Barrymore about menopause and perimenopause, and I did not text anyone, I didn't write anything, and sure, we can get into a conspiracy thing and all the stuff about what's listening to what and giving you smart ads, and sure, yes, okay, but that particular moment, that is exactly what I needed to see. So I felt guided to watch it, and I watched it, and I started to unlearn some of my garbage around the topic. So I'm really just sharing with you that I'm capable of having a block to God. I'm capable of having a block to peace, to listening, to my intuition. I'm capable of having some preference, some story, some idea. I know what my highest good looks like, and I definitely don't think it has to be that. And setting myself up to suffer. Like, I'm capable of that. At this point, I'm going to take a quick break. We're going to go to commercial, so we can just give you a little bit about what we do at the Meeting Space, which is a nonprofit, which we have 112 or 13 meetings a week now to help people heal from addiction, codependency, and PTSD. And it means all the world to me, and it probably is another higher power. We'll discuss when we get back. So I'll see you right after the break. The Meeting Space is a facility with over 100 weekly recovery meetings for addiction from alcohol, drugs, sex, food, gambling, codependency, and PTSD. When someone is scared to go to their first meeting, we walk them through the process, ask them and answer questions to assuage their concerns. Many are court-ordered to attend, and we provide free court papers and teach them the process. Our glass-enclosed, soundproof children's playroom enables parents to be in a meeting while watching their children. We have healing workshops, craft fairs, and special authors who come to teach and sit with our fellowships. During COVID, we were declared an essential business by the County Commissioner's Office. We were kept open so that we can continue our daily work with traumatized chronic relapsers and those who would have used alcohol or drugs in isolation. Local businesses rent our space as well to financially help with this mission.
and they get to have a great location for their business meeting or training. The recovery store in the center of our facility provides literature, clothing, medallions, and custom gifts to encourage, aid in, and celebrate a person's recovery from alcohol, drugs, PTSD, or unhealthy behaviors. Both the recovery store and the meeting space are open every day, including holidays. Saving lives, educating the community, reducing social stigma, providing a safe place for people to heal. Our nonprofit is supported entirely by donations by people like you who want everyone to have a place to go to heal.
Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. One of the ways in which my attachment to things being a certain way blocks me from really hearing God is that I'm not going to want to hear anything that goes against anything. Like, I just had an experience where my dog got diagnosed with something where he has 25% of his kidney function, supposedly, and he's only 2 years old, and I had a whole bunch of stuff come up around this because I felt like, wow, like I really feel like I've been listening to my higher power, on what to feed him, etc. Did I do this? Did I mishear? And I had like paranoid ideas as well, and then I had just sadness and just I felt so attached to. I mean, it's understandable if you're a dog or pet lover, right? Felt so attached to him being okay, and I was rendered paralyzed in certain ways because I just couldn't fathom what to do. And I was aware that this fear, this attachment was so strong that it was hard for me to hear when I'm guided, to trust my guidance. I mean, the thing that was happening was making me question my connection with God. Like it was making me question everything. Like it was like my idea of God guiding does not allow for this to happen like this. And if it is allowing this to happen like this, then what? I was like back to this whole religious kind of God experience rather than the spiritual one that I've come to understand that, things happen for a reason I may not be aware of at the time. And I don't necessarily know how long any animal is supposed to be. I don't even know how long I'm supposed to be on this planet. And like there's just, but I had to feel big feelings, and I even shared at the level of a podium about it. And there is this saying that a problem shared is a problem halved. But I really I was so aware that my issue of my loss of peace of mind was not because of what was going on with my dog. I wouldn't want this for my dog, and I had the whole story about it. Man, my loss of peace is completely my own thing. I made myself crazy, because just I can't get upset about a fact. If there's something happening, it's happening. I have to get into acceptance. I have to be willing to see things differently. I have to be willing to suit up and show up, to listen and to trust my intuition, to do the very best I can and let go of the results. And I can't do any of that when I am operating from a story of this can't be happening, and yet it seems to be happening, and I'm stuck in that headspace. This is one of the things that I feel like I've witnessed in other people as well that are going through something, is this kind of like the mind's a little bit in shock because its whole idea of its sense of like spiritual security for how its life is supposed to look gets shaken, gets threatened, and when these things happen, it's like it's easy to if I have a relationship with a higher power, to turn to the higher power and go, really? What the hell? Or is it me? Am I not listening to you well enough? And there may be truth to some of that, which means I had to really listen. Did I get nudges not to do this or do that? Is there something that I did? And so I went through a lot of emotion around that idea because I have a very special story about my relationship with my dog. Very special. He definitely has a little higher power-esque kind of vibe around him because my level of gratitude for even having him, I love him very much, and I have like attachments to that, specialness around that. So it's been, on the other hand, it's also helped me to really, truly put more energy into everything having to do with him too, in a way that's like, I don't know, more in alignment. So anyway, we hear about different other ways that people can have blocks to listening to their intuition, and I'm no different. Growing up Jewish, and then Daddy was atheist, and then I ended up studying different religions and stuff like that, and then I ended up going full circle and became agnostic, and then which is somebody who believes in something but I don't really know what, and then being finally at some point willing to call it God. But I had these definite ideas of a punishing God, even though I wasn't born with one in my religion, so to speak. I lived in a world where I was abused, and it wasn't anything that you could say, oh, I'm doing this just because I love you. Nobody ever said that. Nobody ever said, I'm hitting you because I love you. It's, for your good. I've heard of that being said to people and to kids, but that wasn't said to me, and I never felt that way. And I certainly don't think that being called, ugly or anything like that by your dad is necessarily, as a nickname is like something that's going to help you necessarily like grow. But he was afraid that I was going to turn into a conceited woman because he had experienced women, his sister even, that in a way that he was afraid I was going to become because he thought I was pretty. But he didn't tell me that until many years later. So I ended up having this like kind of darkish kind of higher power whenever I was like afraid of being abandoned, or my PTSD victim story would tell me something. I would try to turn things over well into recovery, into the beginning of it. Like I tried to turn things over to a higher power, but my trauma would make my higher power into somebody that I couldn't trust. It was like projected onto my higher power. And so I had to separate my higher power into these two kind of experiences. One that was the story I had of this unhealed victim stuff, that all my higher powers kind of became a them energy. They are going to hurt me. Someone's going to hurt me. And then my higher power that I could feel like I could trust. And as I started to put more seeking into that, I started to heal that. And as I healed more and questioned more, I started to have more and more of just one God, one higher power, that I seek for my highest good. You know what I used to do? Nobody ever told me to do this, but this is something that helped me a lot. Because I was so afraid and I didn't trust anything or anybody, I would start to pray, but I would pray like this. Okay, listen, I'm praying, I'm turning things over, but this is the condition that I am turning it over with. This is only for my highest good. I want this to be nothing else but for my highest good. I don't know what the rules are in prayer. I don't know who I'm praying to, but this has to be just for my highest good. And I would say it, and I would say it every time because I was afraid of all kinds of things. I mean, I did drugs, and I used to joke that when I was in recovery, I used to joke that I had to heal from stuff that didn't happen because I hallucinated when I did drugs. I had panic attacks when I did drugs. There are drugs that, because I had so many panic attacks, I gotta tell you, it's helped me stay away from them. And even though I've heard that there are ways around to not have those panic attacks, I'm not playing that game anymore. I'm in recovery. I'm done. I'm so glad I wasn't, even when it comes to pot, I'm so glad I wasn't around all the variety that we have now. It's like, I could have gotten lost in that. And that would not have been good. I'm very, very grateful for my recovery. I'm very grateful for my abstinence from these mind-altering substances. I'm so grateful for it because, man, there's no way that I would be able to face some of this stuff and question some of this stuff and be able to, like, remove some of these blocks to the awareness of my intuition. Another thing that really was something that I would do to hurt my chances of listening to my intuition is, it's funny. We have to watch the things that we say, even when we're joking. We have to watch because we're the ones listening to ourselves more than anybody else. Sometimes we're the only one listening to ourselves. But when we say things like, oh my God, I'm so stupid, right? Or God, I'm so crazy. Or God, I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I just did this. Like when we say stuff like that, we're actually hearing it, recording it, and there's a part of us that doesn't know that we're sarcastic or that we're not serious and doesn't even know that we're kidding. There's a part that believes it. The mind is incredibly powerful, and the body is just receiving. It's just receiving direction, constantly receiving direction. And it's all it does is it receives and acts out direction. That's its whole thing. Nothing comes from the body. It's all literally the mind. Whatever we believe, we perceive, we receive, we experience it, right? Well, one of the things, the negative mantras, if you will, that was a really bad habit that I would do constantly, and eventually, and even to this day, every once in a blue moon, I have to catch why do I feel distant from God? Why do I feel cut off from God? What's going on? And what I'll realize is I might not have said the words, but I definitely think the thought. And that is, I can't. Oh man, I don't know why I can't hear right now. I can't see God right now. Like I can't. And like we think we're like expressing a situation or a condition, but we're really affirming. We're affirming we can't do something, and whether we believe we can or we believe we can't, we're right. So if I'm telling myself I can't, even if I'm not even using the words, but if my understanding in my mind is like, all right, I'm blocked or something like that, I'm affirming that. I'm affirming it. And my higher power, whenever I've said that kind of a thing, my higher goes, well, maybe you change the narrative of that. Like, I just would get this understanding that's like, understanding would like go through my, I can't. It would just come through just a little bit, and I would become aware in that moment, at least, that I am blocking myself. And I would start to go, you know what? I can. Of course I can. Listening to my intuition is the most natural thing in the world. And as I would start to affirm that, oh my God, my whole energy would open back up, and I would seek to see how I am listening to my higher power. I would hear songs that all of a sudden showed up. I would start to say, see, that's God, that's a God shot, or wow, that's happening. And really, because like I see it, I hear it, and it resonates with me. And then I start to go, okay, you know what I need to do? I let go of whatever's happening. I really want to hear, and I affirm my ability to hear that it's of course it's natural. How do I know it's natural to hear intuition? Because intuition comes from within. We already have it. We already have it. It's part of it. It's like breathing. But if I hold my breath, I will believe I can't breathe. But I'm the one doing it. I'm the one telling myself I can't hear. So I talk to God, and I say, okay, you know what? Sorry I even said that, but like talk to me and through me. Talk to me in such a way I can't help but see what you're trying to tell me. Help me to hear you. I can hear you. I know that I can. And I know that there's a way, and like to be solution oriented, to be willing to be wrong, to be willing to like open a book to a page that resonates, open my eyes and read it, and to hear whatever it is that I need to hear, and to just bring myself into that space. That was all I was needing while I was running and telling myself that I can't. I was running and attaching myself to results. I was running and chasing my little higher powers. I was running and talking about fears of what I think shouldn't happen, but it's happening, or it's going to happen, or something like that. Worshiping all the things and not hearing because I'm anywhere but here, you know? And so, yeah, I hope you're getting something out of this. I felt very strongly I needed to share about this. It's so important to me to know that if I am making the world my higher power and I am this helpless victim, if I am giving my power away by holding resentments and telling myself that somebody else or something else has the power to hurt me, if I'm not seeking to understand what's going on in my life from a different headspace other than the one that decides first what my highest good looks like, and yeah, so yeah. So anyway, let's see if there's anything else that really feels to be shared about it. I don't feel like I have anything else. So I'm going to end here. And listen, if you like this show, please share it with other people or like it. And if you have a topic that you really want shared about, or you'd like to come on the show and talk about it, definitely hit me up on Facebook or on the contact form on themeetingspace.com. We sometimes record 2 or 3 in a week, and sometimes I just don't feel guided to record any until something happens, and that's what I felt this week. I felt this God nudge that said, talk about this topic, and so here I am. Anyway, thank you so much for watching The Real Recovery Show. I'm glad you got to join with me, and I will see you next week.